In this module, we're going to be looking at the various military systems that are available for a nation-state to perform when they're constructing their respective militaries. And it'll also ask the broader question of who serves in that society and wears a uniform in defense of their respective government. But before we do that, I want to take a few minutes and examine the two primary ideologies that underpin the American systems before we get into the actual system itself. As you can see here on the first slide, we have the first of the two primary ideologies which were explained in your reading from Eliot Cohen's Soldiers and Civilians. And that is of liberalism, the connection of the ideas of liberalism to American military service. Now, what is liberalism? Primarily, just like we discussed in the Samuel Huntington module last week, it discusses the rights of the individual as being paramount to the American citizen. And because of that individualism, it reinforces this idea of having free will and a choice for a citizen to do whatever they want to do. Moreover, the government is supposed to protect the rights of the individual and the exacting of that free will. Next, it puts a preference on volunteerism when it comes to the actual service in the military or wearing the uniform. Since the purpose of the government is to protect the above, both the rights of the individual and the free will to make any choice that the individual wants to do, the preference for military service is that of volunteerism. That of compulsory military service is not supported by liberalism, as the individual should be free to make their own choice whether or not to serve in uniform and to pursue a career in the military. Moreover, there's a broader philosophical underpinning to this, is that while the power of the state can protect the rights of the individual, it cannot do the opposite. The state or a government cannot compel an individual to have their own life sacrificed for the good of the republic. There is nothing inherent in the power of a government to compel one person or one citizen to take their own life in the defense of the republic or any specific cause. As we learned in the first lesson, Samuel Huntington covered the basic principles of American liberalism, and they're reinforced here in Cohen's reading. Contrary to American liberalism, there's also the competing ideology of egalitarianism, or more succinctly summarized here in the slide, republicanism. Republicanism, broadly defined, is the support of the common good, the responsibility of all citizens to sacrifice collectively for the good of the republic, the good of the government, and the good of the people overall. This philosophy was reinforced by the great civilizations of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, all of which had their collective societies support for the common good and the government. Because of this relationship, it created a symbiotic dynamic between the people and the government, with the government providing services to the people, and in exchange, the citizens themselves owing responsibility back to the government from which provided to them. Citizens now had an obligation to contribute to the republic. Because the government and the republic ultimately provided the citizen with the general guarantees of protection and rights, the citizen was then obligated to give in return, again, validating the symbiotic relationship between citizen and government. Moreover, each individual citizen had to give equally in all of these obligations, regardless of social class. The philosophical connection to this was this idea of equality of all citizens, equal protection under the law, but equal sacrifice for the republic. The burden must be shared by all for the health of the republic. It couldn't be shared by one population more than the other or one citizen more than the other. As you can tell, this philosophy ultimately underpinned the systems of militaries that each of these republics ultimately formed. We can see these philosophical ideas shape the construct and the manning of militias, of conscription services, and the selective service itself. This idea that the individual had to take up arms to defend the republic as a responsibility of their citizenship, and it was a burden that had to be shared by all citizens in order for the republic to thrive. So why are these two ideologies important? Well, the ultimate challenge is both of these ideologies are inherent in the fabric of the American Republic. We have the duality of expressing both of these in our identity and our political structure. On the one side, we embrace liberalism, the rights that are protected by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The individual is paramount, and that each individual citizen has the right to free choice and the free will, that the government can't compel them to give up their life, and that each individual has the right to defend themselves and to defend their own freedom of choice. The American people also believe in a sense of republicanism, of sacrificing for the common good. That is the duty of all American citizens to sacrifice all they can for the health of the republic and to make sure that it thrives both politically and socially. So the challenge when shaping a military system is how does one deal with these contradictions of liberalism and republicanism or egalitarianism, as both are inherent in the American fabric, but both contradict. What you're going to see is going to have to be a series of trade-offs that both governments, people, and militaries have to make in deciding and reconciling the question of who serves. Will it mean more towards egalitarianism or that of the right of the individual? Can you compel an individual to ultimately serve, or should it be one of volunteerism where an individual gets to choose if he or she serves in the defense of the republic? Each of these have pluses and minuses, advantages and disadvantages. So it has to be a collective decision and a bargain between the people, the government, and the military to decide which of these philosophies is going to be paramount in the shaping and manning of the military that protects the republic.